Well, here you go. We just got done with the intro, and this will be part one of the mini series um, about election in the middle of purifying our faith. So here's my intro I wrote out. I remember the day when a brother told me, look, the scriptures say over and over, God prefers redeemed over created perfection. It rocked my world. It honestly rocked my world. My logical brain recoiled at such an idea. But I looked for it, and it's true. God not only puts up with redeemed, but He plans for it. Redemption has a power that humans don't understand, and God does. And so we're going to look at this now by examining the phrase before the foundation of the world. And we're going to get some real insights on the heart and the mind of God. So, first thing we're going to look at is Revelation chapter 13, verse 8. I'm going to read this in the King James Version. Uh, this is in a context of the dragon and the beast. Okay, so all who dwell on the earth will worship him, meaning the beasts, backed up by the dragon, whose names have not been written in a book of life of the Lamb slain from the foundation of the world. That's where I want to start right there. So before God even made a world, he had a lamb slain um, for redemptive purposes. Sorry about that. He had a lamb slain for redemptive purposes. We'll find out that that lamb is his son, and we'll find out that other aspects of it. That there's a book, and it's called the Book of Life of the Lamb. And the Book of Life of the Lamb has people's names in it. And those people will not be tricked or fooled or manipulated by this other entity called the beast, or this other entity called the dragon. They're going to be immune from that. Yet there's other people whose names are not written in that book that will be fooled. But the important thing is, this lamb was slain before the foundation of the world. And so Jesus took on the identity of a lamb slain. And I've messed with my mind with that idea that he was at one point walking around maybe or showing up at events looking like a lamb slain. Now, I don't know if you've ever seen a lamb slain. A lamb slain is not a pretty picture. We used to raise lambs for eating purposes. And I never did it myself. I'd hire the guy with the farm kill, and he'd come out and he'd execute the lambs and then prepare them for the locker and then prepare them for the butcher shop. And so he would do the lamb slain, and I would watch him. And that's not a pretty picture. And the lamb that's been slain and he's waiting for the farm dressing is not a pretty picture. And that's what the picture that Jesus says was on him and on his pre foundation of the world life. Well, that means that God understood the need for a lamb slain as a redemptive issue. And we're going to look at every other aspects of that. But he knew there was going to be a redemptive issue, which means that his creation was going to fail, that he was going to make plans and he was going to execute those plans, and those plans would have a goal, but the goal was going to fail in some way and need to be redeemed. And so the depth of thought that he put into this is pretty crazy. And the fact that he made plans for redemption before he started anything is very telling. So the next part of that very same thing, it's 1 Peter 1, 19 and 20. But with the precious blood of Christ, the Lamb without blemish or spot, he was known before the foundation of the world, but was revealed in these last times for your sake. Now we see that this is talking about a salvation process. Well, in that process, one of the actual saving elements is the blood of the Lamb who is also our Christ, and the Lamb had no blemish or spot. And the funny thing is, this whole process was known and understood before the foundation of the world. That this process of redemption by death, by blood, was already established before the foundation of the world, and it was revealed in the last ages for us to see. But in the mind of God and the actions of God, it was already a fact. And this time it shows a timing in a grand master plan. And this master plan included the way of redemption, and redemption was through blood. Okay, so he had worked out the elements. So the third part of this redemptive part, Hebrews chapter 9, verse 26, talking about Jesus being a priest. Otherwise, he would have needed to suffer often since the foundation of the world. But now, once at the consummation of the ages. That's an interesting phrase, consummation of the ages, which means there's a huge group, well, I don't know, there's a large group of ages, and they accomplish a certain thing. And these ages are coming to some kind of consummation about the time that Jesus does a sacrifice. And he has been made manifest to put away sin by the sacrifice of himself. So now, as we first hear about this thing, sin has now popped up its ugly head. And so his redemption is going to be in response to the presence of sin. And we've heard about blood and sacrifice and about suffering. But he's only going to have to do it once. There's some kind of process by which he can accomplish all this in one time. Okay, so God has engineered the circumstances, and obviously, when there's just a large process like this, there's rules and there's groundwork and there's ways to do things, and he set it all up so that Jesus would only have to do this one time, and the timing was it's a consummation of ages. So there's going to be a bunch of ages that are happening that won't have the advantage of knowing this, and won't have the advantage of the positive things that are coming about because of this. And so we're seeing that there's time elements in that, and the next thing we're going to look at is some of those time elements. So so the next passage. Okay, let's just make sure I got my notes covered. Yes, so he created laws and a prophetic process to get all this done. Okay, so this next one, we're going to read Hebrews chapter 4, verse 3. For we who have believed enter the rest, just as he has said, as I swore in my wrath, they shall not enter my rest, which is back in the Old Testament dealing with the nation Israel, although his works were finished from the foundation of the world. See, he had this so figured out. We have to be impressed by this. God had this whole process so figured out that when he was done planning and then creating the world to go along with that plan, he didn't have to do anything else after that. He's going to watch it all play out because he had planned so much of it and to go in a certain way. So his understanding of this plan, his understanding of the details of this plan are so deep that before he even started the whole thing off, he had it all worked out. I'm picturing in my mind, I'm kind of a Marvel fan, and so when you see Iron Man and the Hulk guy when he's not so hulky, working in the big um, um, room, kind of the workshop, and they have these computer screens that are floating in the air and they're moving stuff around. I can see God doing something like that, but it'd have to be a gigantic room because he'd have so many details and so many things worked out. And he'd have this line all the way through the whole thing. That's going to be the Bible line, where faith is all built around that, and now has all these little side roads, and I can, in my own mind, because I picture things visually. Jesus walking in and says, "Wow, Dad, this is going to be really complicated." He said, "Well, your part's not that complicated, but it's kind of complicated." But he said, "I got this whole thing worked out, and it's all going to fall into place. The way I got it worked out, once I throw the switch, man, it's going to go falling into place." And Jesus goes, "Well, okay, I'm in for that." So So the kind of planning, the capacity of the mind of God is, if you aren't blown away at this point, then you need to go back and pay closer attention, because you're not paying attention, because He is done. When we do our Sabbath, we're celebrating the fact that He did everything that had to be done. And He might do some little nudges here and there, send some angels here and there, but the work is done, and everything's worked out. So 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 He's already done the legwork. Okay, so now we're going to go to the Old Testament. So in the Old Testament, there's some passages that really indicate that God had been putting thought into things way before they even happened. So I'm going to read Daniel chapter 12, verse 1. At that time, Michael, the great prince who stands watch over your people, will rise up, and there will be a time of distress, the likes of which will not have occurred from the beginning of nations until that time. Okay, well, God's talking to a group of people. He's sending an angel to talk to a group of people. They're 2,000 to 3,000 years down the road, and he's talking 5,000, 6,000 years down the road. He already knows what's going to happen, so he says the stuff. And the likes of which will not have occurred since the beginning of the nations until that time. But at that time, your people, everyone whose name is found written in the book. Now we don't know which book he's talking about here. We've already heard about the book of life of the Lamb. Okay, this might not be that book. Okay, but those people are going to come to life. Wow. Okay, so he's already figured out. Now he knows that people are just going to sin and die, and then he knows that at a later time down the road, he needs those people to be alive again. But they've already lived their life, and they've even made all their mistakes, and they've done their bad things, wrong things, done some good things, and now they're gone, and he needs them back on the scene. He's already figured that out. So he's making statements about things that are figured out way a long time ago. Jeremiah chapter 1, verse 5. Before I formed you in the womb, I knew you. Before you were born, I dedicated you. A prophet to the nations, I appointed you. So here's a man, and God says, I got your life all mapped out. You're going to do this, 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 and this. And he goes, whoa, wait a minute. I'm just a guy, living out here in the country on a dirt road. And you're saying I'm gonna be influencing nations? Ah, heck, I can't even get my little brother to clean up his mess in his room. And so, you know, so the reality is, it doesn't matter who you think you are. God makes plans for you. Look out, Katie, bar the door, because crazy things are going to happen. Okay, and it's been planned way a long time ago, and so now you're just here at the right moment. Psalm 139. Your eyes have seen my unformed substance, and in your book were written all the days that were ordained for me, when as yet there was not one of them. I love to read this. I love to read this, and I believe it for what it is. So that means me, Don Walker, and you put your name, whatever. When God was working on you, and you're just a little glob of jelly, and He's doing a little this, a little that, He's working with that. He says, I dedicated you. No, that was the wrong one. The days, he says, before you took your breath, I had the number of days that you were going to live. And we'll read in other places, he had things for you to do. But this one says he has a number of days that you're actually going to live. So, if you live that way, like, when the coronavirus was out and people were saying, are you afraid, Don? Are you afraid? And I said, no, I'm not afraid. I will not lose one day that God has ordained for me. Before I was even born, He knows the number of days. And I said, if I stay 100% healthy and the list of my days goes down to zero, I'll walk out that door and a bus will run over me. And I'll be gone. That quick and that simple. And so I said, so until that happens, the Rona can't take me down. It might make me sick, it might make me slow for a couple of days, but it's not taking me down. So God says, your day's over. So we could live our lives this way, and that'd be a great testimony to who we are in our faith in God. Okay, so so the next section we're going to look at is Matthew chapter 13, verse 35. So Jesus is going to quote from Psalm 78, 2 through 3. He's going to add a little twist to that, okay? Because Jesus knows more stuff than who wrote that psalm, be it David or someone else. Jesus is smarter, so he's going to add a little bit to it. And so, so he makes a statement. This was to fulfill what was spoken through the prophet. And then this is the part from Psalm. I will open my mouth in parables. I will utter things hidden since the foundation of the world. And he's quoting Psalm 78, 2 and 3, which says, I will utter things hidden from the beginning, that which we have heard and known our fathers have relayed to us. So there's the body of knowledge that the ancients were dealing with, that God actually had allotted to them. They had certain information. And so they dealt with life according to what God gave them. And Jesus is saying, you guys get an extra dose of understanding, because I'm going to tell you things that nobody else has known. Since the foundation of the world, God hid a whole bunch of knowledge that he was going to keep for a later date. And that date is now. And I'm going to start letting that out. And so Jesus had access to knowledge that no one else had. And then he gave it to us at the church. And so we had knowledge that the ancient patriarchs did not have, the ancient Israel did not have. And so we're being held responsible for that. We're being held responsible for learning that stuff. That's the one thing that's happening. And so, and understanding. And that's what I'm trying to help people do now. That's why it's called Disciples Going Deeper. So we're going deep into the Word. We're going to dig out that stuff that's been hidden, and we're going to let it affect our lives and change us and prepare us for the things God has called us to. Okay, so the next thing we're going to look at is John chapter 17, verse 24. Father, I desire that they also, and this is in the high priestly prayer, they also, whom you have given me, and we're going to talk about that have given me business, they will be with me where I am, so that they may see my glory, which you have given me, for you loved me before the foundation of the world. So in that time, we talked about at a certain point, God said, okay, Jesus, right now you're going to look like a lamb slain. So that's probably not the whole time that they spent in the time before the foundation of the world. There was probably quite a bit of times there was other things, and Jesus could look like other things. And so Jesus is saying right here, he has a remembrance of the glory that he was walking around with, and that love relationship between him and his dad, how wonderful that was. Well, he's not in that place right now. He's on the earth, a dirty, filthy third world country, with no carpet on the floor, no pavement on the streets, and things were cooked over a fire. In fact, every room you walked into smelled like smoke, because that's how they kept it warm in the wintertime. So anyway, that's where he's at right now, and that's not glory. I promise you, that's not glory. That's just getting by. But he was getting by for a reason, and those things were accomplished. But he wants us to see that glory, and he's gonna be experiencing that again, and we're gonna get to be there with him during it. Okay. So the next thing we'll look at is Matthew 25:34. This is the story, and we looked at this in the thing about the great white throne. And the king will say to those on his right, come, you who are blessed of my Father, inherit the kingdom prepared for you from the foundation of the world. Now, Jesus was giving a prophetic statement back then, a very prophetic statement looking forward into the future when he's going to come back. Well, that hasn't happened yet. But what does that mean? I mean, when it does happen, there's a whole time of kingdom that these people will inherit. And we don't know that much about it. He didn't spend a lot of time explaining it, but it's got to be great. But it's a kingdom prepared from the foundation of the world. So it has elements of it that are in that master plan. You go to one of those screens up there and you say, I want to see the kingdom that they're going to walk into. Well, he'd throw all this stuff on the screen. You see all kinds of stuff there, because he's got it all worked out. Is there going to be cows? Is there going to be dogs? Is there going to be frogs? Is there going to be sheep? Is there going to be mosquitoes? He knows all that stuff. Yeah, you got all that stuff all on the list right there. All that stuff's going to be there. Is there going to be mountains? Is there going to be rain? Is there going to be sunshine? Yeah, it's all on this list right over here. He's got it all worked out. When he sat down to work all this out, he worked it all out right to the down to the detail. He said, "Yeah, and I've already got that. It's already loaded up in the archives. Yeah, I'll just push a button. You know, all sorts of. So I've done all that work. I've done all the work. I've done all the work. I tell you, I've done all the work. Okay, so so when we're done here, there's more stuff coming, and after that, you know, when we did the ages, there's more stuff coming. So we're just in the middle of the stuff that God has planned for us. We're just in the middle, and there's more stuff coming. Okay, next thing we're looking at 6. Ephesians chapter 1, verse 4 and 5, and verse 11. So one time we're going to spend a lot of time in this passage right here, because this is the most powerful election passage there is in the Bible. But for right now, we're going to talk about choosing and the foundation of the world. Okay, so He chose us in Him, and in Him is in Jesus, before the foundation of the world. And here's the purpose statement: to be holy and blameless in His presence. Okay, so when God goes out and puts His finger on it, it picks out any human being anywhere. Okay, it doesn't matter where they're at; they are not holy and blameless. And when God first started whispering to you, you were not holy and blameless. And when God started whispering to me, I was not holy and blameless. Even right now, I'm not all the way to holy and blameless. Okay, I'm getting gone there pretty good, but I'm not there yet because the work's not done. Okay, so we are not only on a list to be called, but it has a purpose, and that purpose starts as soon as we hear that call, and God's got an end game on that will be holy and blameless. So if you get called, then guess what? There's going to be things happen to you, make you holy and blameless. Okay. Um, so in love, He predestined us for adoption as His sons. I get that, in love. So when He sat down and wrote your name and all the stuff about you and all the days that were allotted to you, He's looking at that and He's going, man, I love this person. I just love this person. And so that could be you and that could be me. He's already said that about us. I love this person. Okay. So He predestined us for adoption as His sons through Jesus Christ, according to the good pleasure of His will. There was nobody twisting His arm behind His back going, you know, you got to take this one. Nope, that's not what happened. He said, I want that one. I want that one. I love that guy right there. I love that gal right there. And I want them. And so, and they're going to be part of my family. I'm going to adopt them. You know, when I knock on that door and say, hey, you know, it's time to come over and get serious about your life, they won't be in my family, but I'm going to put them into my family. I'm going to put them right smack in the middle of my family. And I'm going to do all those things that a dad does to make them holy and blameless and all the other stuff I got planned for. That's just the beginning. Okay. So, having been predestined according to the plan of Him who works out everything. Now, does anybody ever ask you, how much did God work out? I want you to stomp your foot, shake your fist, and say, He worked out everything. Okay, that's what it says right here. He works out everything by the counsel of His will. He didn't ask anybody else about how to do this because He figured it out right up here. In His mind, He figured it out. And then He figured out how He was going to do it. That's how men do stuff, build stuff. And you know, I get some of that stuff on my Facebook, you know, about how they build these massive machines and they build uh, these tools to study the stars, to study atoms and electrons and stuff. Guys sit down and He says, okay, we're going to figure out how to do this. Well, God already did that too. He figured out how He's going to do this by the counsel of His own will. Nobody told Him how to do it. He was smart enough to do it on Himself. Okay, number 7, 2 Timothy 1:9. Talking about our salvation, who has saved us and called us with a holy calling. Okay, so that's part of who you are once you've been called. It's a holy calling, not according to our works, but according to His own purpose and grace, which was granted us in Christ Jesus from all eternity. Okay, and that's just another way to say all eternity is before the foundation of the earth. Okay, that's just another way to say it. So this is one of our first warnings that we got is some point we start thinking, I'm pretty hot stuff. God's pretty darn lucky to get one like me because, I've done all this and that and the other, and he's just lucky that I decided to come along when he needed me. No, that's not the way it is. I promise you, that's not the way it is. In fact, if God would have left you alone, you'd be so disgusting you couldn't even stand yourself. Okay, so God, anything that you claim about yourself that has any kind of redemptive value, you can say thank you to God for that. Okay? Because he called you with a holy calling, not because you were holy, because you were not, okay? And not according to the things you had done, because you had not done enough. But according to his own purpose and grace, that he said, okay, I'm gonna give that to them in Christ. If Christ doesn't pay the price, they don't get none of it. So when Christ gets up and does his part, then they get all of it. And we planned that from before I started making the world. Okay, so the last one I'm gonna look at is something I forgot to put on. I've been printing all this out, and hopefully you're writing stuff down. We're gonna look at Revelation 17:8, and so we're going to cover all the passages in the Bible that talk about from the foundation of the earth. We're done here. Okay, so this is the angel talking to John about the beast. Okay, and this is explanation time. And the beast that you saw was and is not, and is about to come up out of the abyss and to go to destruction. And those who dwell on the earth will wonder, whose name has not been written in the book of life from the foundation of the world, when they see the beast that he was and is not and will come. And so God's already figured this whole thing out. And so there are people who are not in our place who are not going to get it. They're going to go, I don't get it. I don't get it. This beast used to be, but he's gone now. But you're telling me he's coming back? That's scary. Okay. I thought we were done with that. Okay. So they don't know the whole picture. You should be studying, listening to this channel, and you're going to have a better idea of the whole picture. And then you talk to God about it, and He'll give you all the details for the whole picture. But there are people who are not going to get it because their names are not written in the book of life. So there's certain information. And we're going to learn about what that actually means to those people because we all know people like that. And so we should have a confidence. And once I learned this stuff, it gave me huge confidence in that area. Okay, so the last thing we're going to look at is Revelation 21, verse 27. Here we go. And so they're talking about the temple that comes down from heaven, the New Jerusalem, and what it looks like and how it is. And we're going to look at specifically about the nations, and I'm going to start in 26. And they shall bring the glory and the honor of the nations into it. So this New Jerusalem. So there's going to be a door and a gate, and they're going to carry stuff in. And it's going to be the glory of the nations. Well, the nations have been at war with God for a long time. Right now, if you're paying attention to the news, there's a war going on right now. And I'm sure, I know that if God came down and said, hey, I'm going to run this little problem, it's not going to be a war. It's going to be something different from a war. But anyway, and so we're talking about the New Jerusalem, and there's going to be a gate, and it says nothing unclean, and no one who practices abomination and lying will ever come into it, but only those whose names are written in the Lamb's Book of Life. So, are the people written in the Lamb's Book of Life intrinsically wonderful? No. They started out just like this, and they'd be probably sitting outside until God comes and works with them and makes them holy and blameless so they can actually go into New Jerusalem. And so that's going to be one of the things. Will we have that attitude of gratefulness when we walk up to New Jerusalem? We see the people that can't go in and we can go in. Will we be proud and arrogant or will we be grateful? Okay, so I want to wind this up with a conclusion. We see that the process of history is God's story. Already it's being played out like he wrote it. It's a big drama. It's a big movie production. It's however you want to do it. But it's going according to his how he wrote it out. And there's nothing that's happened, nobody that showed up, nobody became famous, nobody became victorious that he didn't already know it already. Okay. So this is his story written before he started the earth. This whole thing is scripted out. It's scripted out from front to back, right to left, up to bottom, top to bottom. The whole thing scripted out. And so you're playing a part in a movie that God has written. And so uh, if you decide you're not going to play that part, you step out. Somebody else is going to step back in. Okay. Esther was told, "Hey, you were set aside for such a time as this. So do what God's asking you to do. If you don't, He's got somebody in the wings that are going to take your place. So do what God asks you to do." Okay. So um, it's written out. It's to produce his dream and vision that he's had for the future. Something that brings him great pleasure when he's in the middle of it, and that's all happening. So what's going to happen going to bring God great pleasure. Okay, and so he's right now watching to make sure this all goes on track to the very end. So the House of Cards, of the false little picture of Christianity, you can see from what I told you before, it's kind of like a little bit of a joke. It's starting to fall, according to what we just studied, and there's more coming. So God bless you as you enjoy the study.